Hey there, we are so thankful that you chose to join us for today's message. Make sure you check us out online at wordoflife.church to learn more about who we are, what we believe, and what is coming up next. We are so excited because we believe God is going to use this service to speak new things into your heart today.
Good evening. I thought I'd show you another book tonight, Love and Respect, by Dr. Emerson, and I'm not sure if it's Egerich or Egerich. It's one of the two. But it is a very good book, Love and Respect. Husbands, love your wives. Wives, respect your husband. Very good book. Well, tonight I am going to continue with the 5 love languages. I'm not going to get done tonight. I'm going to get part of it, and Pastor Tom wants me to come back next week and spend a little bit of time finishing it up. 5 love languages. I want to tell you, first of all, about 30 to 40 years ago, I was teaching children's church, not here, at another church. And one of the lessons that I just happened to be teaching at that time was taken from Genesis chapter 11, verses 1 through 9, the Tower of Babel. And if you know the story of the Tower of Babel, the people building the tower were building, and they said, we're going to take it up to heaven, to God. And God looked down, and he saw what they were doing, and he says, they are so unified that nothing is going to stop them. They're going to be able to do anything. And so he came down, but God knew as a unified people, nothing could stop them, so he did what? He confused their language. And when I taught this in children's church, I had them, I brought in a hoe, a rake, a shovel, a pitchfork, a utensil that you eat with in the house, fork or a spoon or something. And I would hold them up and I would give them some stupid name that I made up just on the spot. And none of the kids knew what in the world I was talking about. And I said, and that's what happened in the Tower of Babel. God confused their language. And a group of people understood what that tool was, and they went off together on their own. And then another group of people knew what that shovel was called, and they went off, and that's how God separated a people. So God used that principle. And when Gary Chapman wrote the book, The 5 Love Languages, he did the same thing. He used languages as a vehicle to teach about our emotional love languages. So anyway, that story does nothing but help us understand our lesson for today, the 5 love languages. I grew up in an English-speaking home. I speak English. I taught school and I taught kids in English. I learned Spanish in high school, but I'll tell you the truth, I don't know too much Spanish right now. Que hora es? I mean, I only know a few things, and so I wouldn't do very good in Mexico. Also, my other language that I knew just a teeny bit was Italian, because my mother's was Italian, but she didn't speak much Italian at home. But when I went up to my grandma's house, she would speak Italian. Dove sta Pete? She would say. Where's Pete? She wanted to know where he was, because he owned a junkyard and he was up on the hill working. So I didn't know very much. Well, that's how we enter into this teaching on the 5 love languages. We need to know that there are times that you're going to have these situations emotionally in our love language. It's going to be like someone from another planet or another country is talking to you, and you're not going to be able to understand it. So that's how Gary Chapman wrote this book. So if someone comes and speaks to you in Spanish or Italian tonight, unless you know you can understand them, you're really not going to know what they're saying unless someone interprets. We learn from God in the Tower of Babel that speaking the same language unifies. But speaking a different language will do what? Separate us. And that's what is happening in many marriages right now across the country, anywhere in this world. people are separated because they don't understand each other emotionally. Well, problems seem to come and follow people that get married, and those are some of the frustrations that people have in marriage, even though they speak the same language, we'll say English. So it isn't really the language itself, it's just a vehicle. Because they don't speak the same emotional language, whether they all speak English, they can understand what each other is saying, they just aren't getting it. They're not getting at what they're really trying to say underlyingly when they say something. So, I'm going to give you an example. Many couples are communicating on a cell phone with bad reception. So they don't understand each other. It happens to me and my wife all the time. She talks to me in the kitchen and I don't understand what she's talking about sometimes. And a lot of times it's because I don't hear her. She's facing the other way. I'm in the other room. I hear a half of what she says. Well, here's an illustration. An old couple were walking through the mall, and recently they received from their children a cell phone. Well, they weren't too familiar with this cell phone yet. And while they were walking along at the mall, the wife said, "Honey, would you answer that phone?" And he says, "No, I don't want to go home, but I have ringing in my ears." Well, he can hear it, and he didn't understand it, and there was a communication gap in there. The correct message did not get through. Well, in Courtship Stage, I mentioned last week that we as couples come equipped with blinders, but I didn't mention about the earmuffs, and I didn't mention about the filter mask that we wear over our mouths, because we're on our best behavior. After the honeymoon, one half of that spouse, one half of that couple came from their parents' house or an apartment, and the other one came from their parents' house or a different apartment, and now the two of them got together. Well, they transferred all their clothing, all their belongings into that house. Somewhere along the way, some things got lost. Well, that's what it's going to appear like to them when they're there, after they're there for a while, say a month or two in that apartment, and you begin to notice things that they're saying to each other or doing. You're going to think, what happened? Well, they took the blinders off, they took the earmuffs off, and right now they can see, hear very clearly, and they don't like what they see, hear, or see happening with their spouse. For example, the wife wants help around the house. This is a good example. And obviously her love language is probably acts of service. She wants help around the house. The husband, and he remembers, what did Dad do when Mom was mad at him about something? Well, he went out and he bought a bunch of roses and he brought them in and he gave them to her. And did that make her any happier? No. Did that take care of her wanting help around the house? No. Giving her flowers didn't mean a thing to her. Well, that's the problem that begins to happen with young couples when they get married, or older couples, whoever they might be that are getting married. When we try to tell our spouse they are doing things we don't like, just trying to explain it to them, and are not doing things we would like, they find the message is not being comprehended, they just aren't getting it. It's like the Tower of Marriage, taken after the Tower of Babel, can't understand each other. So there is a language barrier. Marriage is like a box of chocolate. I like this illustration. You pick a piece of candy and you see it and you think, oh, I love chocolate-covered peanuts. And this looks like chocolate-covered peanuts. And you take that chocolate-covered peanuts and you bite into it and it's got fruit inside. Yuck, I hate that. Well, that's what a honeymoon is like, by the way. When you bite into it, you might bite into something that you really didn't like. And guess what? I sure hope there are other chocolates in that box. that you can enjoy because you're stuck with that box of chocolate for the rest of your life. Hope you catch my drift. To set the stage, Gary Chapman likens the heart to a bank. You put deposits of money in a bank, and you got a raise, you got extra money, and you put some money into the bank, and you want it to be there so that you can withdraw that money when you need it. That's the important thing about doing it. When we speak our spouse's love language, we make deposits into that love tank, which is the heart. That sounds easy, right? Well, the positive side is love deposits happen when we do something our spouse desires. So there are 5 love languages, and you'll say she has the first 2 are she likes red and she likes blue. If you do something that's red or give her something that's red or something that's blue, she's very happy. You've made her happy because you spoke to her 2 favorite colors. Or in other words, her first 2 love languages. But love languages don't have a good, return on investment, because every time you put in 1 deposit of love, you get 1 deposit into the love tank. All right, but the next day you have an argument. And that ratio of return isn't very good on love languages, because when you have an argument, guess how many deposits you take out? 5. So it's 5 to 1. That's not a good ratio for marriage, but that's the way it is. That's what the experts tell me. Now, you do the math, you would be making an awful lot of deposits, or you're going to be in trouble. And here's what happens. If there are no deposits, you cannot have a fight because there's nothing to withdraw. And if you do that, there's 0 in the bank, and you have a big fight, nothing in there, you're going to have an explosion, and that's called a big fight. And some of the marriages end up in bankruptcy. They file bankruptcy because nothing there. And you continue to do that. And I call that a bad marriage. So what do? Her love language might be words. And her last love language might be gifts. And because of opposites attracting, somehow you end up with a spouse where his love language, the first one is gifts, and the last thing on his list is words. So they have a hard time communicating and getting along because her words are up here, his words are down here, his gifts are up there, and hers are down here. They're going to miss each other all the time. So if Paula's love language is words, and I bring her home a gift, she's not going to care a bit about that. She just wants me to tell you how much I love her, and so on. So what do we do if this is the case in our relationship or someone that we might know? 1, you are to choose active expressions of love in the primary love language of your spouse. Thereby, you create an emotional climate where you can deal with your past conflicts and failures. Things go better when you're getting along naturally. Then your spouse's deepest emotional needs will be met, and they will feel secure in your love. If your spouse does the same for you and meets your emotional love needs, you're both going to be living with a full tank at all times. And I call that marital bliss. I know what you're thinking. You don't know my spouse. Well, forget about your spouse. No, don't really forget about your spouse. But what I'm trying to say is forget about that if you're thinking that about your spouse. Remember, with God and you cooperating, and that's the key. With God, everything is possible, but there has to be cooperation from 2. One can save a marriage sometimes by themselves. One part of that couple, one spouse, can do all kind of stuff and turn things around. I can remember when Paul and I first got married, I was pretty hard to live with. I'll confess, I was the worst culprit in our marriage when we first got married. A beaver, hard to live with, set in my ways, and she's a nice golden retriever, and I guess I don't know what I was doing to her, but it wasn't good. Anyway, I remember when I got saved, I'd lay there and I would pray, Lord, change her, Lord, change her, Lord, change her. And she's over there praying, Lord, change him, Lord, change him, Lord, change him. And here's what happened. God spoke to me as the head of the household, and he says, you have to change. I don't know if he said, dummy, you have to change, but he said, you have to change. Anyway, I began to change, and a miracle happened. And that's why I'm talking about cooperation. When I started changing, I noticed that she was changing. But I don't know, maybe I was blind and didn't realize it, but when I started changing, that's how I perceived it happening, that she was changing. I guess because I was nicer, she was just nicer. If your spouse does the same for you, full tank, emotional bliss. You know what the word says? Miracle worker, we sang it tonight, promise keeper, light in the darkness. He never stops working. It's not always up to him, but in our marriage, it's going to be up to two. Two people have to make a change. It can't always be done by one. I made the step when I knew I screwed up and I was a dud, I guess. And I had to change, and when I did, she began to change. Well, you ask, how can we speak each other's love language when we're full of hurt, anger, resentment, and frustration? And I have couples who come into my office, and that's exactly how they are when they come in a lot of times. And one of them is very upset with the other, and they're very frustrated with each other. And over these past failures have really knocked them out of the game. I've knocked them out of the running. They don't even want to go on anymore. A lot of them say, we just want to end this thing. Can you help us? Well, God has an answer. He said, we are creatures of choice. What that means is we have to choose to change. We have to choose to be different. We cannot just say, well, that's the way I am. I don't feel love anymore. Well, David said, my soul will magnify the Lord. Joshua said, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Those were choices, those were decisions that were made. And I have over 100 scriptures right here in these pages about love in the New Testament, basically. And most of them are saying, love one another. One, love another. And if God said, love one another, what's he going to really be expecting about our spouse, someone that we have a covenant with between him and us two? When we get married, we have a covenant with the Lord also. In that marriage, it's threefold. So if we're supposed to love one another, it's really, when we're married to each other, we really better be more loving to our wife, hopefully, than we are to some of those people in the body of Christ that we don't even really know. Love is not a feeling, love is a choice. I don't feel love for them anymore means I'm choosing not to love. It's a problem not with you not wanting to love, it's a problem that's right here. It's the problem of the heart. When someone comes in and says that, I don't love him anymore, I just don't feel love anymore, I say, I understand what you're saying. You don't feel love anymore, but love isn't a feeling. Love is a choice. And God says, with his help, he can take care of that heart problem that you have. Number 4, poor choices in the past don't mean that we must make them in the future. We can change at any time. It doesn't matter when. It's never too late. Next, instead we can say, I'm sorry, I know I have hurt you, but I would like to make the future different. Number 6, I would like to love you in your language. We must be willing to learn our spouse's primary love language if we are to be effective communicators of love. Then we begin to feel each other's hearts. I'd like to introduce the 5. As I mentioned them, think of a couple things. Is that me or possibly my spouse? All right, to those of you that are not married out there, man, woman, or whatever, you may be single and you may be looking for someone, and you may be thinking about a friend, because you have to get along with friends, just like Pastor Tom said at the beginning. This isn't always about marriage. It's about people that you work with, people that you have in your family. You have to know how to deal with each other. Knowing what their love language is, you can deal with them a lot better. But if you're single, you better pay attention. If you're still looking, see what you are and then choose wisely after that. Because after you choose and you're already coming in here to get premarital counseling, you've already picked that person. You already think you're ready to get married. And then you find out your love languages are woo. And then I say, well, that's okay. You can work it out. It's just going to be hard. Number 1. You have to know all 5. So here's number 1. Words of affirmation. Paula's second love language is words of affirmation, but it's not mine. This person's emotional love thrives on verbal compliments or words of appreciation or encouragement. I love you. You look great in that outfit. You are great at that. Thanks for doing that for me. And boy, she's really good at saying thank you. I hear her saying it on the phone. I used to hear her saying it in her office when she worked there. And she taught me a lot about being thankful by just listening to her. You make the best pie. You're so polite. You're the best mom in the world. You're the best aunt. You're a great friend. If you're a man, the wife is going to say, you're a great husband and you're handsome. Or if it's your wife, you say, you are beautiful. And those are the things that if a person has words of affirmation is their number 1 language, you've got to start speaking words of affirmation to them. They want to hear positive, sincere words from the heart. And you're going to say, oh, well, yeah, hers is words. I'm just going to talk a lot and say things just to flatter her. And that'll take care of the problem. That doesn't take care of anything. She will see right through it. She'll know you're being phony. It has to come from the heart. We can all talk, so you think this is going to be the easiest love language there is? It may be for some, but not always. Because past hurts, misunderstandings, and those kind words don't always come rolling out of your mouth so easily. Because that person hurt you, hurt your feelings, and aren't making you too happy, to all of a sudden start speaking nice words to them isn't going to be easy. But I call that the stubbornness of our hearts. When a tongue can't speak words of affirmation, again, guess what it is? A heart problem. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. That's what the word says. You put in love, love's going to come out. You put in the word, word's going to come out. You put in garbage, garbage is going to come out. So love is a choice. God asks, will you love your spouse enough to speak their love language? That's my challenge to you tonight. When you're finding out what their love language is, my challenge is going to be, are you going to speak it? It's fine if you know it, but big deal. But if you don't speak it, it's not going to work. To sum up, number 1, words of affirmation. This love language requires you to talk in a positive, encouraging way to your spouse. If your spouse's love language is words, you better start using encouraging words, and you better start now. Number 2, quality time. This is me. I want Paula's attention. I want her time. This person's emotional love thrives on undivided attention from the one you hold dear. You want the one you love to focus on you during conversations and when you're interacting. not talking to others while they're talking to you. Paula does this sometimes. She's a social person, and she talks to 3 people at once. She'll be talking to me and on the phone and texting. Sometimes that happens, and I look at it like she's a little mother hen with all her little chicks around her, and she's talking to them all the time. And so, since I realize that and I know that, I give her that space because I know God uses her. And she has a lot of friends because of her personality and because she is that type of a person. You're not watching TV and reading something from a book and not paying attention to whoever your spouse is. If they're words of affirmation, you better put that stuff aside and talk to them. Or you better set aside a time that you can talk, because if you're doing that, they're not going to like it, and they're not going to be happy with you if you're doing that, because you're distracted. I like an intimate evening alone, out with dinner and conversation. I like my wife and I to go out to dinner. I love going out to dinner because I want to be with her. And if that's what it means to be alone with her, then let's go out to eat. You want togetherness and focused attention. You want almost anything that you do to be together. Shopping. I go grocery shopping with her. I can go clothes shopping with her. I don't care. Eating, whatever. Driving in a car. It's a great time. We've done a lot of talking, driving places, doing home projects, et cetera, et cetera. My brother Chucky, who had quality time, was one of his, and he would go to Lowe's. And I would see him come into Lowe's, and there's his wife sitting in the car waiting on him. He'd go into Lowe's, or she'd follow him around in Lowe's. She didn't want anything in Lowe's, but she knew his love language was quality time, and she went with him because she knew that's what he wanted. Maggie, our little dog at home. Maggie's too much. She does this. She goes, she barks without opening her mouth. When she's trying to get my attention, she just doesn't open her mouth and just right there. And because she sees me putting on my scarf, putting on my coat. Well, first she sees me putting on my shoes, and they start following me around the house. They think, oh, he's going somewhere. We're going to get to go. And they get all excited. And then when I'm wasting my time or talking to Paula and I'm getting ready, and Maggie will start, come on, I'm waiting. Let's hurry up and get out of here. Because one of her love languages is quality time. She barks under her breath. So, and this is a good one. Now we have a chair in the bedroom, and if I'm in there working on my computer in the bedroom, I put her on the chair, and I walk out of that room to go out into the kitchen. I'll be out there less than a minute, and she'll be in there barking real loud. You left me in here, come and get me. Because she wants to be right there, so I gotta go get her and bring her out. If you're going to spend much time together with your spouse, if they're quality time, you must become friends. I ask you the question, who is your best friend? I sure hope your best friend is your spouse. It should be. Next, this love language requires your willing time and presence. They want you to be there with them, and that's what it requires. So if your spouse's love language is quality time, that's going to be required of you, time and your presence. Number 3, receiving gifts. We're doing good. Receiving gifts, that's my youngest son, Jason. He's a gift giver, and that's one of his love languages. How many know Deb Barley in here, know who Deb Barley is? Those of you that have been here for a while know who Deb Barley is. Deb Barley was the queen of cards here at Word of Life. She gave cards. She sent cards to people or text messages for holidays, birthdays, or whatever. That was her gifting, and it's how she showed love. She would buy you a present, and there it will be sitting at your doorstep at home, or she'd have it on your seat when you come into church, whatever. That's what she would do. That was just part of her thing. My son Jason, he's a gift giver, and he's very much like that. If you give them, you usually want to get them. Whatever your love language is, we have a tendency to think, that's everybody thinks the way I do. I think gifts is the best thing in the world. So I'm a gift giver and I expect gifts. Well, that's not my love language, but not my top up there, but it is my son's, and it is a lot of other people's. So whatever your love language is, don't always think it's your spouse's. It may not be, it may not even be close. The person with this love language craves gifts. Gifts are a token of their spouse's love. It doesn't matter what that gift is. It's just something you can hold in your hand. You can look at it and know he or she loves you and was thinking of you. There are trophies of your love on display. I have in my office things that my sons bought me when they went here or went there, sitting on my desk or on the shelf. And I have a beaver, because when Pastor Tom starts talking about the 4 animals, I'm a beaver. And when he talks about the beaver, that's just one thing that someone caught a hold of. It was Pastor Elaine, and she went away, surprised me with this gift. She brought me back a beaver. It's a little stuffed animal, so I stuck it on my desk, and then I took it home, and it sat on my dresser for years. And because it was just, I knew I was a beaver, and it always reminded me of her, and she gave me that. You can look at it and know that they were thinking of you. My son's presence in my office, and also a clock. I have a clock in my office that was given to me by my first secretary here at Word of Life. I don't have a secretary, by the way, but I did for a little while, and she did buy me a clock anyway. And the Valraths who aren't here tonight, when I first started working here at Word of Life, they gave me this pen and pencil set that holds these little sticky notes. And I still have that to this day sitting right there on my desk right in front of me, because that was just, I felt that was like love from people. Whether purchased, found, or made, they are received as an expression of his or her love. I made a lot of things for my wife and a lot of things for my children through the years. Well, it was just something that I really liked to do. I had the ability to build and make furniture and things, and so I did. And I very much enjoyed doing it because it was for them. And that was when they were young. And I built 3 houses for Paula and I. The first one, listen to this. The first one I designed totally on my own. I picked everything, I designed it, and I built it. After we built it, we found some things we didn't like. We found some things she didn't like too. Yeah, right. And so after that first house, we figured the next house I'll do better. And so the next house I had to change the design a little bit. So if you're going to do something for someone, do something they really like, you know. Don't buy them a lawnmower. I don't think they'll like that too much. So buy them something that they're going to enjoy. Furniture. For my sons, I built one a house, and my one son was into music, so I built him a couple studios. But those are just things that I went out of my way to do to show my love to either my spouse or my children. Because sometimes we do things, you will do things for your children. We just naturally do. Gifts can also be something intangible. A gift for your spouse could just be your presence being with them, especially in a time of need or a crisis. You have a close friend and they're right there in the time of need or crisis. That's very important to you. That really helps. And that's what your spouse can be just for you. If that's your love language, it speaks volumes to them. This language, I want to tell you one thing though, will cost you money. They don't all cost money, but this one does. You got to use your creative ability, your time, your talent, or spend the money. And sometimes it's effort if you put into doing it for them. If that's your spouse's love language, you're going to have to bite the bullet and do what it takes to do just that. Number 4, acts of service. Now, this is Paula's number 1. She'll tell you it's words, but it's really acts of service. She likes words an awful lot, but I'll tell you, she likes acts of service a lot better. This is an action language. This is another one of those love languages. Hope that your spouse isn't acts of service, because if it is, you're going to be doing a lot of things to keep them happy. You might get tired on this one, because you're going to have to work. This person with this love language thrives on a love of a spouse or a person that does things for them. And you can't, and this is very, very important, I found that out the hard way. You can't think of it as a job, something that you have to do. I used to do that. Eventually, you, the spouse, will learn this, and hopefully you'll begin to change your ways and not do that. Because she'd ask me to do something, and I would grumble and complain a little bit, and every time the Lord would convict me, and I'd go and do it. But the point was, and she says, you ruined it. You already ruined it already. Because I grumbled and complained and didn't want to do it. So she saw my heart wasn't right. And so eventually you'll learn, and because you know it will make them happy and it'll fill their love tank, you will then begin to do that out of love, which I had to learn to do. This person is pleased by their spouse doing things for them or around the house. Paula does, and it pumps her up. These are things they probably would feel obligated that they would have to do themselves, but they're happy if you did it first. To them, you did it especially just for them. Guess what the first thing is when Paula does when she comes home for a vacation, when she goes somewhere? She'll come home, give me a little kiss, and then walk right over to the sink and look the sink. Oh, you did the dishes. Well, she doesn't really say that anymore. At the beginning, she did, just to make a point. And then she goes and checks the floors. If they're vacuumed, the carpet looks good, and everything looks clean, I get a reward. But if it isn't, because one of my love languages is physical touch, you know. So anyway, what happens is she checks it out, makes sure this is all looking good. So that's what you have to do. I found out she doesn't want the floors dirty, carpets needing vacuumed, and dirty dishes in the sink. I already know that. I say this for a reason. You need to know what offends or instead shows love to your spouse. If your love cooks you a meal, washes the dishes, helps you do a task, etc., you receive it as an act of love. You know, my wife actually makes lists. Before she goes away, she does it anytime, actually. She'll make a list. They'll be sitting on the counter, a list, maybe 5 things or 10 things, and listed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This needs done, this needs done, this needs done, and this needs done. Now, I call her my secretary. She is my secretary because, it's just a joke there. She's my secretary. She is my secretary. She has a list of things that I'm supposed to do. So she writes it down, and it's supposed to be, I'm supposed to do them. Oh, well, I blew that one. Anyway, I'm sorry, I apologize. Let me finish this. You do not want this service done for you out of constraint or duty. And I sure had to find that out the hard way, grumbling and complaining. And you want it as a show of love and a concern for your happiness. When you need help doing a thing your spouse offers to help, it makes you feel loved. This love language requires you to work or do things in the physical realm. So if you're lazy or have low energy, remember, love is a choice and you're going to have to change. And it will pay dividend. Well, I saved the last one. The best one is last. And it's the one I'm going to start with next week, physical touch. I'm going to tell on the pastor next week, for one thing. So, Pastor Sheldon's coming. I'll be back next week. I'll finish up the last one.
Amen.
And then I'll tell you how to find out what your love language is.
Yeah. Bless you, Paula. That's all I got to say is bless you, Paula.
Pastor Sheldon,
Yes.
she said, don't embarrass me tonight. Or
Did
don't
you say that? And you went and did it anyway.
It was a slip.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. You know, when Connie and I were first married, just to verify what Pastor is saying, when Connie and I were first married, I would jump because at the time I was working in a bank and she was working as a nurse, so she would work odd hours and she'd get home at some odd hours, and I'd get home about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'd clean the house and do the dishes. Man, I'd run the vacuum cleaner, and then I'd go, ta-da! You know, look what I did. You know, and she would say, just sit down here and talk to me. But look what I did. You know, well, just talk to me. But look what I did. We had a hard time those first couple of years because we didn't know the love languages. I wish we'd have had this teaching when we first got married, but because it would have helped an awful lot, really would have. But praise the Lord. Well, thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you so much again for tuning in with us at Word of Life. If God is using Word of Life Church in your life and you would like to partner with us financially, click on the Give link on our website where you will find out how to give and the perfect option for you. You can also text to give right now by texting the amount you would like to donate to 84321 and follow the link. We also want to know what God is doing in your life and encourage you to email us at mystory@wordoflife.church to tell us your story. If you're local to the Greensburg area, come join us some Sunday or Wednesday and bring a friend with you. We love you, God loves you, and we cannot wait for you to join us again.